In this week's episode, we preview the conference finals and we talk to three great guests and get more analysis into the Stars, Isles, and Bolts. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Borjaranov, and the mic is always on. You can find me on Twitter at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on the three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with three hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, go to jablamsports.com, see all our podcasts, and even game notes for each episode. You'll get links to all the things we mentioned on the show, including guests. For our podcasts, click on podcasts, and then hockey on this show specifically right on our website. Time for some trending now. Logan, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Again, people can find you
at Hoagie99
on Twitter. And this week, the series of the round 3 has already kind of started. We're previewing them, of course. And we're going to go, before we go right into the teams and preview them, we're going to go to the poll that we tweeted. And we try to do polls on our Twitter account at Jablam Sports. So go there, check those out. We tweeted a poll for every single team, but specifically we are going to talk about the one for the entire league. And at the halfway mark, if you can consider this a halfway mark, I don't know, there's a pre-round robin / mini-series to get in there. So
usually it's a halfway mark. But...
Yeah, usually it is. But at the halfway mark, who is your MVP pick? And our options, and of course, if you have any others, you can put them on there. You can leave comments. But our options we had posted were Miro Heiskanen for the Stars, of course, Braden Point for the Lightning, Shea Theodore for the Golden Knights, and Semyon Varlamov for the Islanders. Before we get into it, maybe I'm surprised though. If we're looking at the votes now, I'm surprised Theodore was the lowest in how people rated. He's my number one.
I picked Theodore as well, just because a lot of points, a lot of great defensive work. This was before the Tampa Bay Lightning game, though.
Yeah.
So if I'm thinking about it now, Point might be just off that game alone, he's gotten more points than everybody. He passed Heiskanen for the most points. So it's like, but I'll still stick by Theodore. He seems to be doing it all from the back end, whereas Point is Tampa Bay's loaded up front. Heiskanen, I guess you could make the same argument for Heiskanen, but I still like Theodore better. So
that's it. That is the reasoning behind this whole essay that I've written to finish my university degree. That's it.
Yeah, that's my thesis.
Well, I'm with you with Theodore. Again, I'm kicking myself in the butt that I didn't buy his jersey when I was in Vegas, and I even told Joey when we went, I'm like, I love this kid, and we watched the game, and I said, you could tell, watching his skating, his vision on the ice, defensively, offensively, he is fantastic. And I even saw this when he was playing with the Ducks. I was surprised they let him go and kept the other guys. I think if we're just looking at the last 6 months. 6 months? Okay, let's just go with the last month. He's probably the best player overall, in my opinion, in the NHL. I think he's great. I'm surprised people have him lowest voted. I do know that we posted this before the game last night, and then, of course, it ended up finished today, the poll, and Point was much lower earlier, and then it climbed up, and especially the Tampa one that we did. I think Point was 0 in that one. I don't know why, over Hedman, and I think Hedman's been great too for them as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think Theodore has been exceptional. Heiskanen has had good games and bad games, whereas I think Theodore, maybe the exception of game 1 in this series, he didn't look too great that game. And I think a lot of Golden Knights didn't look very good in Game 1, but he's looked steady throughout the whole playoffs and offensively, defensively, everything. I think Shea's been fantastic.
He's been showing up every game.
Yeah. Varlamov was our option for the Islanders, but we were talking right before recording this. I really think if you had the option, if it was possible, Barry Trotz should be the MVP for the Islanders.
Because it doesn't matter he's just rolling four lines. Greiss gets thrown in because he had a shutout in Game 7, and now Varlamov's back in, and who knows who's starting tomorrow or for Game 3.
Yeah,
I assume it's Varlamov, but anything that comes their way, they're ready for every game. So Trotz is getting them out. Doesn't matter what happens the last game, if they've won or they've lost. It's a new game. Trotz gets them thinking that way. So
yeah, well, I do think the Islanders were way out because they just battled a big, huge Game 7 emotionally. Even if they're physically tired, emotionally, they're spent, and that's why they didn't look very good in the first game. He'll have them ready in the next game. I think we can go right into our predictions for the series, and we'll start with the Eastern one with Tampa and the Islanders. I really feel that Tampa's going to win. I thought they would go pretty far to begin with. They were my fourth team. For some reason, I went crazy, and I thought Philly would actually go pretty far, which maybe they might have. I think Giroux and especially even Couturier didn't look good for the Philly Flyers.
Yeah, they could have if their top guns didn't really come out to play.
Yeah,
and their goaltending were still fine.
Yeah,
Carter Hart was still stellar. Just their number 1, number 2 forwards, didn't do anything.
Yeah, they weren't too great. Those top guys for Philly, and that hurt them. They could have really gone far if they were. But that's why the Islanders are so good. Trotz has them outworking their opponents, out defending, grinding, making sure they're not getting that many good scoring opportunities. They're, scoring after they recover the puck on plays. So they're just all the signs point to great coaching from Trotz, and everybody's following suit. And I get into this with the interview with Rob about the Islanders, that they look much more like a team, maybe you could say, without Tavares. Yeah. Without Tavares. Right?
I mean, I don't know they're really with Tavares. No, I wasn't really paying attention to the Islanders, 3 years ago or whatever. But, then maybe they got a chip on their shoulder like Vegas, all the Vegas players do. It's like, well, this guy, the star player left us, and now we have to fight to show the world that we were a contender to begin with.
Yeah, I have Tampa in 6. What do you have?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Islanders are not as bad as the 8-2 loss suggests they are. They'll get at least one win in. They might. I could see them fighting for another one, but I still think the Lightning are just somehow better than they were in previous years, where they just bounce out in the first round.
Yeah, I think
the same guys.
I think they have a lot more depth, and they have a lot more experience now. And sometimes it takes 4, 5, 6 years to get these guys like Matthews and Marner, and for them, it's the Kucherovs and maybe Braden Point and some of these other guys that they have to go through it a couple more years to know what it takes physically and mentally to break those barriers and go past a round, 2 rounds, and deeper. And they're doing that. They're learning. They beat a hardworking team in Columbus, which they struggled with last year. That they got them off their game, and this year they were the opposite. They were focused and they got on the right page. And then with the Bruins, another tough playoff type team, they did the same thing. So they're battling really well with these hard-working playoff type teams. More physical, more defensive, hard-working teams. They're beating them now, which they might not have in years past.
Yeah, they're out battling the battlers. And once you start believing that you can beat these teams, then you actually all of a sudden are beating those teams. So,
yeah. I don't know what you think the Islanders can do in this series. They have the most goals forwarded per game and the least goals allowed per game of the teams remaining. So I think, again, that all goes to Barry Trotz getting every inch out of this lineup.
Yeah, a lot of systems. I think they're still pretty good on the power play, or they have been at the very least. And even penalty kill, it's all those little systems of everyone doing their job. Sometimes it's not who you have, but where you have them.
Yep. Then in the West, it's Dallas and Vegas. I have, even before the series started, I even wrote it down. I have Vegas in 7. Dallas is just, they've been interesting to say the least. I didn't expect them to go this far. And again, I've been saying it every single week. I have Vegas going all the way to win the Cup. And I still pretty much do. Tampa Bay does look pretty strong. We'll see. But again, after the game tonight, Vegas looked great, and they looked sluggish in Game 1. But I think they're a little bit more focused. I still think this series is going to go to distance, and Vegas is going to win.
Yeah, that's what it seems almost unavoidable. It almost seems like they're just going to switch shutouts every game now, too. Like Vegas kind of took a game off, and then Dallas took a game off, but they can both still come back and have another 1-0 game not tomorrow, but the next day or whatever, Game 3.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like they're just going to go back and forth. So
yeah, so we'll see how it goes. I just don't know how Dallas is playing this well and going this far. And they're another team where a guy like Tyler Seguin only has 2 goals these playoffs. Dallas has played 16 games already. And they're without Ben Bishop. And they're only 7 games away from maybe winning a cup. And a guy like Seguin only has 2 goals. And they're playing with Khudobin and now Oettinger, I believe his name is, the goalie that came in.
Yeah, Oettinger.
So, wow. And Khudobin's been great. He's been pretty good for them.
He's gotten them some wins. The games that they've lost, he's kind of, I want to call him a kooky bastard because he is, but that's not I don't mean that as a bad thing either. A lot of goaltenders are just a little bit out there, and you kind of have to be to play at that level probably. Yeah. But he's been in there. He's been shutout Game 1, and I don't think, was that his first shutout? I can't remember, but he's been playing well all playoffs.
Yeah. Khudobin's been pretty good. He's outworking. He's not a big guy, especially comparing him, the role he's filling in behind Ben Bishop. So it's a size difference there. But he looks pretty good for these playoffs, and he's got experience for sure. So we'll see how it goes. All right, that's it for Trending Now. Let's get to some interviews and more detail on those 4 teams still running for the Stanley Cup. Now for some Stars talk, let's talk to Bruce LeVine. He's the co-host for the Dallas Stars radio broadcast. You can find him on Twitter at Bruce LeVine Puck. Bruce, welcome back to the show.
Oh, Peter, thanks for having me on. I'm just glad that we're still around and still talking hockey right now.
Yeah, I hope we keep talking about these amazing Stars, and they're interesting to watch because they're getting offense from various players, and they're a little unpredictable too as well, right?
Yeah, a little unpredictable. Let's face it, who saw Yoel Kiviranta saving the season in Game 7 against Colorado? I mean, you could have thrown a million people into the hopper, and I don't think anyone would have said, yeah, let's put somebody in the lineup for Andrew Cogliano. Cogliano never misses a game, but he's going to miss Game 7 because he's hurt. And the guy we're throwing in is going to have a hat trick after scoring 1 goal in 11 games for the Stars this regular season. No one would have seen that.
Oh, Bruce, why are you bringing me up these memories? I had Colorado going far, and then I was cheering. I was sorry for Dallas Stars fans. I was cheering when they took the lead, and then they scored back. I was like, oh, my God. And then, oh, my goodness. He was fantastic. That was beautiful. I saw the shirts that are already coming out. People are buying them. Oh, my goodness. What a story. That's amazing.
Here's an interesting stat which will blow your mind. In the 27 years of Dallas Stars hockey, I'm going from 93 when they got here from Minnesota on, Dallas had 0 hat tricks in their entire postseason history. Modano, Hull, Neuendijk. Morrow, no one had a hat trick. They've had 3 this year.
You're telling me Jimmy Langenbrunner did not have a hat trick?
No, he did not. Nor did Craig Ludwig.
Oh, man. But Brunner, man, he had some good runs in the playoffs. I remember that.
They had some outstanding. That's what makes it so amazing. Is Joe Neuendijk, Modano, Hull, but they never had it. And this year they've had 3. But that's what happens when you play hockey in August and September.
The ice is
weird
unpredictable.
Things happen. Yeah, weird things happen.
All right, let's talk about some great players. And we did a poll this week for all the teams on our Twitter account at Jablam Sports, and we did one specifically for the Stars and for everything. The funny thing was we did one for the entire playoffs, and I think the options for MVP at this point, obviously, we're just talking about the halfway point, and the options we put on there were like Braden Point, Miro Heiskanen, Varlamov, and I can't remember who, Theodore, for Vegas. And Heiskanen won that one as well. He won for the entire playoffs as well as for just Dallas itself. And I had his options there. I had Khudobin and Dennis Gurianov. I think he's played really well as well.
He has played well, but Miro Heiskanen has been unbelievable on the blue line. Mm-hmm. I mean, 21 points coming into this conference finals series. He had the most points of any player still playing in the playoffs. Now, obviously, Braden Point with his game 1 performance has surpassed him, but Braden Point is a center. He's supposed to surpass him. But Miro's been amazing. I mean, he's 5 goals, 16 assists, 21 points, but he's averaging nearly 26 minutes a game on ice. And not to belittle Braden Point, who is a fantastic player, but could Tampa have gotten to this point in the postseason without Braden Point being the best player on the ice for them? Well, maybe they could have. They've got enough people out there that if Braden Point takes a night off, they could probably win a game or 2. If Miro Heiskanen doesn't show up night in, night out, the Dallas Stars are playing golf right now, and he has been that good. And the most amazing thing to me is that people are now all of a sudden learning about Miro Heiskanen and finding out what a great player he is. Last year, there were more than 34 writers who did not have Heiskanen on their Calder Trophy ballots. And I'm just wondering, did they not stay up? Did they not watch the Dallas Stars? Was he just not sexy enough? I don't get how 30-plus people could say, nah, he's not top 3. Don't get it now. Didn't get it then. But I think he's showing everyone in this postseason just how good he is. And the great thing is he can now legally drink in the States. He just turned 21. So there's a lot more of this kid coming down the pipe.
Yeah, after he's had a few drinks in him, he's going to be even better, right? This isn't the 70s hockey.
No, and he can't pull a Sergei Zubov and have a couple of darts between periods either. That's just not a good idea. Hockey's evolved. Yeah,
it sure has. You were saying with ice time. Yeah, he's right after McDonough in terms of guys still playing, in terms of averaging ice time as well. And he is doing everything. He's fantastic. I think for Tampa, though, I will say this: if they were missing Hedman, I think that would be a bigger hit to them, like a Heiskanen would be for the Dallas Stars. Yeah.
And that's just it. I mean, you look at a guy that kills penalties, power play, even straight. And that's what Hedman does with Tampa. That's such a huge hole to replace. I mean, look, Tampa's getting this done without Stamkos right now. And I'm not saying that Braden Point being gone would be good for Tampa, but I still think they could win series and they could win games without Braden Point. The Stars cannot win without Miro Heiskanen. Now, granted, Tampa's probably saying, we don't want to even try that theory. We don't want to test it. And I understand that. But Miro Heiskanen and John Klingberg have been so good on the blue line. They are truly irreplaceable.
They sure are. Talking about players that seem like they are maybe replaceable, and it's Tyler Seguin. Like if you think about this, just this idea that they're technically maybe 7 games away from winning a cup, and Tyler Seguin has technically 2 goals in 17 Dallas Stars games, and they're playing without Ben Bishop as well. It's crazy as a thought.
Well, Anton Khudobin last year was amazing. But the problem was his numbers, his win-loss numbers weren't good because he would play the back end of a back-to-back and face 41 shots and lose 3-2. And the Stars would be in a situation where they have no business being in the game, but he's been so good for so long in the understudy role that no one's shocked that he has stepped up and been this good, because he's played. Anybody who watches the Dallas Stars knows that, the Stars had the second best goals against in the regular season. Mm-hmm. Well, Ben Bishop has not been otherworldly this entire year, and he's hurt now, but Khudobin has been special. Now, as for Tyler Seguin, here's a guy that missed some of the round robin, missed some of the early going with an injury. And the question is, is he 100%? Is he 80%? What's going on with him right now? We don't know, because we're not in the bubble. We don't hear. But the prevalent thought is that Seguin is gutting through something. Now, when all this is over, whether it goes to the Stanley Cup Finals, we find out afterwards, or they lose this round, we're going to hear something about Seguin that we did not know. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is. We're not in the bubble, but you can tell that he's just not 100%. But he's out there trying to win a Stanley Cup and trying to lead the team by example and doing things like winning faceoffs and throwing bodies. But yeah, it would be nice if you could just get another 3 goals out of Tyler Seguin per series. Yeah. It would make things a lot different for the Dallas Stars, and they need him on the power play, and it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it sure hasn't. So the series is now knotted up at 1 after this 3-0 loss tonight. Big loss, but I think they looked exactly like Vegas looked in Game 1. Just tired, plain and simple. Like, they were beat. They were tired emotionally, Vegas, in Game 1 after their 7-game series. And then Dallas is kind of the same way in Game 2.
Yeah, it was sort of a sluggish thing. There were some mental errors. If you look at Dallas tonight, the first goal was a mental error. The bad line change and not getting back into the zone, and the defenseman rushing Pacioretty in the corner rather than playing off and letting the goalie take the man at the far side and keeping the puck coming through the middle. Then there was a power play goal, and then followed by a 3-on-1 because the forward jumped into the play instead of covering for Jamie Alexiak, who went in. The forward went in as well and left things wide open. It seemed like Dallas made some mental errors that we haven't seen. But you know what, Pete? Part of this is that when you're in a playoff series and you win, or you practice on an off day, you get to go home. You get away from the game. You see the family, or if you're a single guy, you go home and you hang with your buddies, you do whatever. There is no getting away from this right now. Mm-hmm. You play a 7-game series, and it is right focus, and you're living in the bubble. You're living with the same 50 people, and it is sort of a bit of a mental grind. Rick Bowness says that one of the better games Dallas played against Colorado, I think it was Game 4, was the game after they went to Commonwealth Stadium and kicked the football around and played some stuff and got away from hockey. This is becoming not just a physical grind like the Stanley Cup always is, but mentally it is not easy to be. This is 6+ weeks they have been living in a hotel in Edmonton with just the 50 guys. I mean, and by the guys, I mean the GM, the coaches, the trainers, everybody. It's the same 50 people living in there. And it's tough to be mentally sharp every single day. But the team that can handle this the best is going to be the one that wins.
Yeah, for sure. It was funny that you mentioned that players are breaking away and finding ways to get out of their out of the game mentally and everything. And I think Robin Leonard just tweeted after the game that he was going to go play some video games now to just relax and unwind.
Yeah, we had a lot of guys. If you looked at the Dallas Stars photos, the social media for the Stars does a great job of guys getting on the plane for Edmonton. There were a lot of people carrying video monitors in their hands. This is a big way to escape, and it's also a way to connect with people on the outside. You have your group that you play video games with, whatever it is you're playing. You can get a little bit away from the game, and it's a little bit of a mental break and a mental escape from what's going on. But I guarantee you, everybody, you've been there 6 weeks. Another 3.5 weeks to play for the Stanley Cup wouldn't bother anyone.
Yeah, it would be great to see them go further. Who is this interesting young goaltender we saw replacing Khudobin tonight?
Jake Oettinger was a Dallas Stars first-round pick. Ironically enough, they traded up to get Jake Oettinger the same year that they drafted Miro Heiskanen. So it could be wind up being one of the generational drafts for the Dallas Stars. He played college hockey at Boston College as a true freshman. A lot of times guys play junior hockey for a couple of years in the States, USHL or NAHL or the U.S. national team, and then go to hockey as a 19 or a 20-year-old. Oettinger at the time was one of the youngest players in NCAA hockey. He's from Minnesota, but ironically enough, he went and played at Boston University. So he left Minnesota and that area, which is a hotbed.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota Duluth always has great teams, and of course the Gophers and St. Cloud. Well, he went to go play at Boston University, and the Stars just love him. And he is the goaltender of the future. With Ben Bishop being hurt, he's been the backup goalie, and they put him in tonight to get him a little, I don't know how much it is to get him NHL experience, or more so just to give Anton Khudobin a night off, because even the one night he was supposed to have off, Game 5 against Colorado, he wound up coming in the first period. And that's a big stretch for a guy that quite frankly has never had to carry the load like he is carrying right now.
Yeah. What do we need to see out of Dallas to beat Vegas 3 more times?
Very simple. Pucks have to go into the net. If you look at Dallas, they scored the first shot they took in the series. John Klingberg scored in Game 1. They have not scored a goal since. That's 117 minutes and 24 seconds of not scoring goals. Dallas is a team that in the regular season, if they're going to play this the way they play, they're what they call Dallas Stars identity, which is low scoring, they've got to get to 3. There was a point in this hockey season, in the regular season, where Dallas had scored 3 or more goals 33 times. They had either won or gotten to overtime shootout in 30 of those 33 games. So for the Dallas Stars, 3 has been the magic number, and this team can't win scoring 1 goal on 1 shot to begin. Mm-hmm. They've got to find a way, and part of that, Peter, is they've got to make life difficult on Robin Lehner. Even to a certain extent in Game 1, we didn't see the goaltender having to fight through screens and battle deflections and rebounds. It's got to be net drive, and Dallas has got to go to the front of the net and make life miserable, or at least very difficult for Robin Lehner. And most importantly, they've got to control the puck in the Vegas zone. We haven't seen a whole lot of that in the first 2 games as compared to what we saw against Colorado, where Dallas had periods of time where they really were grinding down and working the cycle and getting pucks to the net. We need to see more of that. And one thing that Rick Bowness has stressed is you've got to win faceoffs. You win faceoffs, you have the puck, and you get a chance to run your offense. Well, tonight, I believe it was 61% to 39% in the dot for Vegas. That's got to change too.
Mm-hmm. Again, you can find him on Twitter at Bruce LeVine Puck. Bruce, thanks for coming back on the show.
Peter, thank you very much for having me. I hope we play long enough I can do this again.
Now let's talk about the Islanders. We have on the show Rob Taub back on the show. He's a digital producer at the New York Post and a writer for Isles blog. You can find him on Twitter at @rtaub_. Welcome back to the show, Rob.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Before we get to the series with Tampa, let's talk a little bit about other things. One thing that I see is trending on Twitter a lot is people like to mention that Tavares is not a part of this team now, and they've gone really, really far without him. Look what you're missing out, Tavares.
I think people are just having fun with it. I know I am. It's hard not to when, you see the success the Islanders are having without him. Mm. And, like someone said on another podcast who is a friend of mine on Sunday, he said the day that John Tavares left the Islanders is the day they became a team. Mm-hmm. TEAM, team. That's a big thing to say. And I think you've seen it in these playoffs and over the past 2 years since Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello have been at the helm. I just think, why not have some fun with it? It just shows that maybe he did make the wrong decision. I'm not going to say, I'm going to keep my opinion to myself on that. Mm-hmm. But, it's hard not to, try and maybe rub it in Leafs fans and in his face a little bit because, he could have been a part of this. He really could. The Islanders, he could be playing right now tomorrow in Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Instead, he's sitting home or golfing or, he made his decision. That's fine. And it's final. But, Islander fans are going to have fun with it because, Islander fans have been the butt of jokes for a very long time. And, now it's time to dish some out to some other teams who are the ones doing it to them.
Yeah, everybody loves to poke the Leafs. That just seems like everybody likes to pounce on them. And, of course, for the Islanders fans, it is Tavares. I will say 2 things. Number 1, I have noticed many times in the past and many times in the playoffs, when a big player is down or he's out or he leaves the team, they do unify. I've noticed many times in the past, Matt Sundin being one of them in very similar instances here with Tavares. Number one, when he was injured in the playoffs, obviously many moons ago, weird players like the Alan McCaulleys and stuff, they joined together and they started playing better. And then when he came back, they weren't functioning as smooth. So is it harder to blame that player or just the cohesion of the team not being built that way to work with superstar players? It's hard there, right?
I agree with you. It is hard to say. I think with what we've seen from the Islanders in regards to what you were just talking about, I think that there were guys when Tavares was here that they didn't have like a role. They didn't know who they were as players. Like you take Brock Nelson, for example. He's a completely different player ever since John Tavares left. And, credit that due to Barry Trotz because he's turned him into one of the best two-way centers in the league. But I remember listening to what Brock Nelson had to say after Tavares left. And, and especially last season, it was like he felt like he was, not where he should have been. And it was because that he was stuck in a weird spot because the Islanders did have Tavares. Then came Matthew Barzal. They had Franz Nielsen for a long time. Nelson just didn't fit. He didn't know where he was fitting. And I think he's the prime example of, maybe the Islanders, I'm not going to say the Islanders are better off without John Tavares. I will never say that because I'll hear it from everybody that I'm wrong. And I agree with that. But I think that what you're seeing now is I think that there were certain role guys and even like someone like Josh Bailey too, like he's found a different kind of like mindset like without Johnny there and without him on the team. And I just think that these guys have filled their roles the way that they were supposed to be in the first place but maybe there was a little bit of, I don't want to say pushback, but there was some confusion or like you said, a little bit, not enough cohesion among Tavares was here. So I think that's what you're seeing from the Islanders now. And, I'm happy to see it. I mean, like, how can you not be? They're in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
They deserve to be there, and it's because that they are playing as a team. They play as a team.
Yeah,
you can't say.
Yeah, you got to be excited about your team and how far they've made it. The other comparison I will say with Sundin and Tavares as well was how they left the teams. They both said during those seasons that they were with the team, they're staying with the team, and things change. Their mindset changes. And then I'm a little bit more on the side of Tavares, at least, because with Sundin, he said he would never join a team mid-season and go for a run. That's exactly what he did the next year with the Canucks. With Tavares, ownership really changed before, during his free agency, UFA during the summer. And that was different. If he had known, obviously it wouldn't have been possible, but if he had known Trotz would have been the coach, or if leadership, management and everything was a little bit more stable, very possible he could have stayed. So we don't know.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to one thing I do want to talk about too, right before we talk about the series, is who do you think is the MVP at this point? Like the guys that I'm thinking of that are popping into my head is either Varlamov, who's probably been the most steady overall. Obviously, maybe not so much last night, but coming in for Greisch, of course. But he's just been more steady among all goaltenders in these playoffs. And of course, Josh Bailey, who in my mind, he's kind of resembling Mark Savard out there during this playoff run. Just how amazingly shifty he is, and his passes are excellent. He's making guys like Matt Martin and others look like all-star snipers.
It's a great comparison to Savard, and I agree with you. And you're right, Josh Bailey, he's playing on a completely different level right now. He's playing the best hockey of his career, and he's been the longest tenured Islander. And as someone also pointed out to me last week, never complained. Decided to take less money to stay here. Never has bitched or moaned about his place in the lineup, anything of that nature. And he's just doing what we expected him to do. It's just come later in his career. I mean, what we're seeing right now is what the Islanders thought they were getting 12 years ago when they drafted him 6th overall. But the way that they're getting it now, I mean, it's better late than never. But you're completely right. He's been the MVP of this team in the playoffs. Every single time he's out there, he's making a difference. He's making plays. He's being creative, being very crafty with the puck. Just some of the passes that he's made in this playoffs are just incredible. Some of the goals that it's led to. I mean, you just can't be more and more impressed with Josh Bailey. He's definitely been their MVP, and I mean, I don't know if it's going to be the same this series. I hope he keeps it up. I know everyone had a rough night last night. We'll get to that, in a second. But I've loved the way Josh Bailey's played, and he deserves it. He took so much crap over the years, and for him to finally, be getting that success and feeling that after being with the team such a long time, I really, really feel for him.
Yeah, he's been playing really well. And so let's get to that irk of a game debacle. Game 1 blowout, 8-2. Where did it all go wrong?
I think it went wrong as soon as the puck dropped. You looked at Tampa just came out guns ablazing, and then the Islanders had no answers. And I just think that the Islanders, they looked tired, they looked overwhelmed. They look like a team that played a game 7. And I tweeted, they look like a team that played a game 7 2 nights ago, and they left everything out there. As much as they really just dominated Philadelphia, and really Philly didn't get anything going. That takes a lot out of you. I mean, and you play a 7-game series, that also takes a lot out of you. It's not just one game, but I think last night, I think they were behind the 8 ball from the start. Tampa came at them in waves. They've been waiting for them. They've been waiting a week to play, and they showed it. They showed they were the fresher team. I think that when Eberle tied the game, I thought, okay, maybe the Islanders could, maybe get something going here, but right after that, Tampa puts up 2 goals in a span of minutes, and the game was basically over. And you had Semyon Varlamov and Thomas Greiss. They were just left out to dry, and you got to feel bad that was the case. But and I blogged about it this morning. Maybe this is what the Islanders needed. I think that this could be a turning point for them in the playoffs. I mean, I'm not going to say they haven't had turning points in the playoffs. I think in each series there's been a game where you could say they had something like that, but this is to a different level. This is Eastern Conference Finals. But I think the way they got throttled and the scoreboard read 8-2, and they just didn't do anything to push back. I think and the way they let Tampa just run all over them, I think that might have been the best thing that could happen to them. Rather than losing a close game in overtime and losing a heartbreaker, and then Tampa just has the momentum going already, I feel like the Islanders are going to get to their game tomorrow. I think we're going to see a completely different Island team. And just because I have the confidence because of what Barry trots. Everything that comes out of this guy's mouth and everything that the players say, and even though they said burn the tape yesterday, and we're moving on, they are. Yeah, it's been like that every single time they've lost in the playoffs, and they should have won that series against Philadelphia before it got to Game 7. They were the better team, probably 85% of the series, and they just let Philadelphia hang around. Yeah. But I think that last night, they were tired. I think Tampa just, they just came at them in a way that they didn't expect. And I think that it was also a wake-up call that this is a new level of play that the team's gonna have to get to if they want to go play for Stanley Cup. They got to turn it up to another level, and I think they will tomorrow.
Thomas Greiss didn't look that great. Varlamov didn't fare much better after he came in. How do you see it going forward? Are they going to lean on Varley a little bit more? But Greiss still has better numbers, but I think Varlamov's looked more steady overall.
See, this is a decision where I'm glad I'm not Barry Trotz, because to make this decision is very, very, very difficult. But, he makes it when he's in the postgame, he makes it sound so easy. But I don't know. I think that maybe you go back to Greiss tomorrow. I think he deserves it. I think, like I said just before, the Islanders the defense left them out to dry. There was nothing that they could do on any of those goals because Tampa was just flying up and down the ice. But I think that, I think go back to Greiss tomorrow. And then if you see another start like that yesterday, or he gives up some softies, then you go back to Varlamov. Really, the Islanders, if you really think about it, the Islanders have 2 goalies right now that they can depend on to take them as far as they can. Yeah. And they've both been good when they needed to be. But I think what you saw last night was they were tired too. Greiss only had to stop 16 shots on Saturday. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. he just looked like he wasn't ready to go last night, and it happens. But I think you go back to Greiss tomorrow, and just go from there. And you have to remember something too. Tampa, they only have Vasilevsky they can really lean on. The Islanders have two goalies that they can lean on if this series goes, one way or the other. But I believe Greiss tomorrow, and if something goes wrong, you go back to Varlamov. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. What is the update on Clutterbuck? Is he out for the next while? It looked like he might have fractured something with that shot there.
Well, last I read today, it seemed like from what Trotz was saying that he'll see what happens with him tomorrow. It seemed like he was in good spirits today, but who knows? We didn't know what Matthew Barzal's status was going to be after he took that errant stick. It's a little to the face. It's a little different when it's a guy who plays the way Clutterbuck does, and he literally throws his body to the wind, and he's willing to sacrifice it for the team. And I go back and look at that block shot, and that was a heavy shot.
Yeah.
And I'm not. And I would think if the game was still within reach, I think he would have stayed in. But the way the game was going, I'm not surprised that he went to the locker room and he didn't come back. But if he plays tomorrow, okay, that's a good sign. But the Islanders have a lot of depth. They have a lot of depth that they can look forward to. They got Tom Kuhnhackl, you got Michael Del Cole. I think, you've got guys that can definitely fill in his place. And you've seen, that fourth line has been phenomenal in the playoffs. Have they had their moments where they have looked a little tired? Yes, but they've been great. Matt Martin has 4 goals they're getting great production from that trio. And I think, even if with Clutterbuck out, I think they could still be effective. I don't know if they're going to be as effective as we're used to seeing, but I think that if he plays tomorrow, that that's what it is. If not, the Islanders have the pieces in place to where they can replace him and get production.
You can find him on Twitter at @rtaub_. Thanks for coming on the show, Rob.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Let's talk some Lightning. Now on the show is Justin Godfrey. He's an editor at Raw Charge. Of course, that's a part of SB Nation. You can find him on Twitter at TorchRamrod. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me on.
So before we get into Game 1 talk and that blowout, we're pretty much, I guess you can think of it as we are at the halfway mark of the playoffs so far. I even put a poll on my Twitter, and that's what I usually do, at Jablam Sports. And it was, who do you think the MVP pick is so far for the Bolts so far? And it was close, but the options were, I put out at least Vasilevsky, Point, and Hedman. Hedman edged out, and in my opinion, I think all three have been spectacular. Braden Point, in my mind, best forward these playoffs. Victor Hedman, who's been heady and steady back there, is eating up tons of minutes, anchoring all the plays, and still supplying lots of offense. And then there's Vasilevsky, who has been really solid. He's basically has the best save percentage among all goaltenders, especially remaining. And he's been the only goaltender, I think, that's played in every single game in these bubble playoffs. Of course, leading in most categories, including the most important one, wins.
Yep. And I think that's part of the John Cooper philosophy. He is very loath to pull. We were actually talking about it amongst ourselves yesterday, our staff, of, you're up 7-1, 8-2, whatever. Are you going to pull Vasilevsky just to give him a break? Mm-hmm. Chances are the answer is always going to be no when Cooper's coaching. So it does give Vasi the chance to rack up those numbers, and he has been really good. I think he struggled a little bit in the first game against Columbus. You usually tell when Vasi's struggling if he's getting beat by long shots over his glove. And that first 2 games, he kind of struggled with that a little bit. But, you play 5 overtimes, and your goals against ends up looking good no matter how many you give up. Mm-hmm. As far as me personally, I think Braden Point's your MVP. It's a close race between him and Hedman. Hedman's been outstanding, especially since we thought he wasn't even going to play. Mm-hmm. That last game against Philly in the round robin looked like he blew out his ankle or his knee or something, and he's slamming his stick going off the ice. And all of our hearts dropped. And then, of course, he comes out and plays almost an hour in that first game against Columbus. But Point just looks like a totally different player. We've always loved him in Tampa ever since he started. He skipped the AHL. He didn't give them an excuse to send him down to Syracuse when he first came up as a rookie. Last year, he put up 91 points. This year, not quite the high point total, but still the best forward on the game. We've always thought, I think for the last 2 years, he's been the number one center, even with Stamkos in the lineup. He's just been fantastic. And it's looked like he's had another gear ever since they restarted. So he's just his consistency in scoring. He's the best player on the ice whenever they go out, whenever his line's out there.
So the update on Stamkos now is that he is out for the entire round. Of course, he re-injured himself during camp and for the return to play action. Do you see him coming back at all then? Maybe next round if they make it to the next round?
Honestly, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I think this is just them playing a little coy with the other teams.
Yeah.
Whatever he did, I think he's probably out for the rest of the playoffs. That's how we've been attacking it, as from a writing standpoint and covering the game. It's just not anticipating him coming back anytime soon. Based on his history, if he could play, I would say if there was a 60% chance he could play, he'd be out there right now. So whatever he did to himself coming back from that core surgery is definitely, I think, going to keep him out for the rest of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Tampa, after that good rest, taking a week off, beating the Bruins in 5 games. Of course, they beat Columbus in 5. One thing I kind of thought was kind of weird was that they flew out to Edmonton the day before this third round. I thought, they had almost a whole week off. Why wouldn't they have gone earlier? So they've basically been staying in this bubble in Toronto by themselves waiting, and then they exploded on the ice in game 1, right?
Yeah. And Cooper had actually mentioned it. I think he gave him 2 days off after the win against Boston, game 5 win. And then he said one of the things that surprised him is about how crisp they were working the puck around in that first practice back. Mm-hmm. So that's something they really focused on. That's kind of, honestly, that was my biggest surprise in game 1 is they came out and they didn't look like they had missed a beat. Point, of course, blows around, who's it, Bullock, 90 seconds into the game or something like that. He's blown by a defenseman. And then throughout the whole game, they were just, their passing, I think, was the number one thing that helped them win. It was so crisp that the Islander forwards just couldn't get out to block the shots, the first level shots.
Yeah,
so
it's crazy. They seem like they're the hottest team in the playoffs. That 8-2 win, firing on all cylinders. I think Hedman and Shattenkirk had like 3 points, and of course Kucherov and Braden Point with 5.
Yep.
Wow, just spectacular.
Yep, and you would think that would make me super happy and super positive about the rest of this series, and I am absolutely terrified, to tell you the truth.
Well, why is that?
Yeah, based on the history of this team, when they get comfortable, they get sloppy. Mm-hmm. And against the Islanders, you can't do that. I know they were kind of played off the ice last night, but I think that was a factor of fatigue, not getting ready. Mm-hmm. Barry Trotz has gone up against the John Cooper team, actually a team that's really similar to the one he's seeing right now. A couple years ago when Trotz was in Washington. So he's going to come up with a game plan. There were, as much as the Lightning dominated, there were a few plays that were a little nerve-wracking, some passes across the blue line, some behind-the-back stuff. You got to remember, it was tied 1-1, and the Islanders had a shorthanded breakaway that, they scored there, it's 2-1. That probably changes the entire complexion of the game. Mm-hmm. Instead, the Lightning come back and score on the power play. I have a feeling the Islanders are going to throw everything they got at them in game 2. So the Lightning have to be ready for it. And I still think this goes 6 games, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. My pre-game 1 prediction was Lightning in 6. So I think that still kind of ends up being what it is.
Mm-hmm. If there is a weakness in their game, we have yet to really see one this entire run. Is it maybe overconfidence right now? What could it be?
It could be. That's the one thing I'm worried about. Mm-hmm. As good as Kucherov is, he does get a little fancy with his passes when he doesn't need to be. He does love the behind-the-back stuff, which more times than not does work out for him, but every once in a while he'll just send a lazy one. Sergachev kind of does the same thing. Hedman from time to time. those lazy passes from blue line to, from defender to defender that can be picked off easily. They do give up their fair share of breakaways and odd man rushes, which is why it's nice to have Vasilevsky in the back, because he tends to be pretty good on those high danger chances. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would say overconfidence. Penalty kill hasn't been exactly what I want it to be or what we want it to be. So those are the two that I'm looking at that would make me a little nervous.
Yeah, why hasn't the PK been great? They on paper, like, they were one of the best during the season, and then at the trade deadline, they go and add Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman. You'd think it would be even better, and it just seems like they've been subpar in the PK these playoffs.
Sometimes they get caught watching the puck a little bit against Boston. I don't know why, but they just decided to leave Brad Marchand alone by the side of the net 3 or 4 times, and he burned them every single time.
If
they get caught out on the ice.
If you get too close to Marchand, he might lick you. So you got to watch out.
Exactly. So maybe that's what they were doing. They were just kind of like, don't want to be anywhere in the time of COVID. Don't want to be anywhere near Brad Marchand. Yeah. But they get caught puck looking a little bit, and sometimes I think their forwards leave the zone a little early, looking to attack the other way. So that does really kind of go against them a little bit there. So that's the one thing I'd like to see them tighten up. They do take a lot of careless penalties as well. Sometimes they'll get caught out of position, and the stick comes up, hook the hands. So when they get into ruts like that, even actually all 3 series now, there's probably been 2 extra penalties a game that they just picked up because they're out of position. So if they can cut that down, kind of tighten up on the penalty kill a little bit, they should be all right. So
yeah, you know what? I can go into detail about how weird it's been in terms of not really having that home ice advantage. And if you look at statistics, this year, the referees have evened out the away and home penalties, whereas usually there's less penalties for the home team, especially in the playoffs. But they don't really have that advantage this year, and Tampa would have had that advantage given them being a top seed, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I was going to say, just I think they finally figured out their power play a little bit. It's struggled through the first 2 rounds. Yeah, they made a couple changes. That's where not having Stamkos really hurts them the most. That threat from the left circle. But they ended up flip-flopping Kucherov and Palat, put Kucherov back on his natural left-hand side, and that opened the ice up a little bit for him. So they've at least fixed that part of the game. That was something that we were getting really nervous about when they went through an 0-for-14 stretch or something like that. Yeah. So, but they looked really good last night on it, so we'll take it. Hopefully that pulls forward.
Thanks for coming on the show, Justin.
My pleasure, Peter. Thank you.
I want to thank all our guests today. I'm expecting 2 very long series, so we might have Bruce, Rob, and Justin back again. Next Wednesday, we'll get more into the series talk and update how each of them are going. Stay tuned for that. Go to jablamsports.com to see all our podcasts and even game notes for every episode, and you'll get links and info to even the guests we mentioned on this show. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends. Please and thank you. You can also contact us on Twitter or on our website. On Twitter, where I'm at Russian98, or the entire team at Jablam Sports. You can also use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. You can also go to our website directly, jablamsports.com/contact. Also, if you like wrestling, you can check out our new pro wrestling podcast. That's Pro Wrestling Explode, presented by Jablam Sports. It's where Pepperoni, Miranda, and I get into AEW and WWE, and we recap, analyze recent matches, storylines, pay-per-views, and what's in wrestling news. Thank you, everyone. This week, shout-outs to Nilo Audio. He's the man behind the Jablam Sports logo. He's a terrific graphic designer, and he knows what goes into branding and design, and he's a really cool dude, too. I like talking to him about beers, classic sitcoms as well. Also, we will be having on our website soon enough, You can purchase Jablam Sports paraphernalia like shirts, hats, and mugs. And we'll also have donations page, so stay tuned for that. And to all of our listeners out there, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.